It's Monday, November 29th, 2010. In this week's BeakerBeat, Thanksgiving feels like Groundhog Day for Johnson & Johnson. Find out why. Plus, one of the FDA's top dogs will be home for the holidays, permanently. And getting creative to keep the execution train rolling along despite a severe shortage of one key drug. All that and more in this week's edition of BeakerBeat. Hello everyone, welcome to this week's edition of BeakerBeat. I'm Mike Justice, thanks for tuning in. Just trying to work off some Thanksgiving turkey and pie. Pie. Hope you had a good holiday. Well, here's our top story for this week. 2010 must feel like the film Groundhog Day to Johnson & Johnson. They keep repeating the same day over and over. Once again, J&J has found manufacturing problems at its now closed for remodeling plant in Fort Washington, Pennsylvania. The damages? About 4 million packages of children's Benadryl tablets and 800,000 bottles of Junior Motrin caplets are being pulled off store shelves and out of wholesale warehouses. The silver lining is that packages of the drugs that are already in consumers' hands aren't affected. The company says the products are safe for continued use because they passed quality testing and haven't prompted any complaints about side effects. Earlier this year, J&J's McNeil Consumer Healthcare Unit recalled 34 million bottles of children's drugs made at that same plant, and the FDA scolded the company with a brutal inspection report about the facility's condition. Soon after, the plant was shut down, most of the workers were laid off, and the retooling to fix the problems began. J&J said the latest recall stems from an internal manufacturing review prompted by the repeated quality problems. As mentioned, the children's drug snafu isn't the only recall trouble J&J has faced recently. Certain lots of other drugs were pulled, like adult versions of Benadryl and Tylenol, along with hip replacement devices and contact lenses. In all, J&J has pulled at least 15 different products, and the FDA and the Justice Department are investigating the recalls. CEO Bill Weldon is attempting to fix the problems, and while progress can be slow and painful, there is light at the end of the tunnel. In fact, the company reintroduced its first children's Tylenol product just last week.
Man, this exercise stuff is for the birds. Anyway, tell us what you think about this story or any story you see in here today's show. It's very simple. Click on the orange button below me. A box will pop up. You type in your comment, send it to me. I promise I'll read and respond to every one of them if I survive this. Man.
And when you're done watching BeakerBeat, check out Beaker's blog, where we take a look at the top 10 medical innovations for 2011. The list includes groundbreaking drugs for cancer, hepatitis, and multiple sclerosis, as well as technical innovations like incisionless bariatric surgery. That story and more on Beaker's blog.
This is more grueling than dealing with the TSA on Thanksgiving. Hey look, it's a unicorn.
In what could become a landmark decision, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit has determined that a Vermont law restricting the commercial use of information relating to physician prescribing patterns is unconstitutional. The decision favors IMS Health, SDI, and Source Healthcare Analytics, three health information companies that filed a lawsuit seeking to prevent Vermont from enforcing the law. Put simply, the law, which prevented companies from selling data gathered on physicians' prescribing habits to companies seeking to market their drugs, violated constitutional free speech protections. That's according to the appeals court. Vermont passed the law to limit drug companies' marketing campaigns as part of a push to reduce healthcare costs. More than 100 similar bills have been introduced in state legislatures nationwide, but only 3 have been passed into law and none since 2007. The head of the FDA's Criminal Investigation Unit is stepping down months after the latest round of criticism directed at his department by congressional investigators and government watchdogs. Terry Vermillion, who joined the FDA in 1992, is being shown the door. He is among the highest paid officials at the agency at roughly $200,000 per year. Now, Vermillion has had a rough year. His department has been the subject of several investigations requested by federal lawmakers. For example, a few months ago, the GAO said that the FDA must exercise more oversight over Vermillion's unit, which has operated largely independent of agency leadership, despite growing dramatically into a $41 million operation with 230 staffers over the last decade. That came on the heels of questions from Republican lawmakers who wondered why the office focused on drug abuse cases rather than on drug makers' misbehavior. Then Senator Charles Grassley told the GAO that its report on Vermillion's office didn't go far enough. Citing a whistleblower from within the FDA, Grassley said Vermillion misused agency staff for personal purposes. Plus, the AP reports, the whistleblower said he often supervised his department from his home in coastal Virginia, and he, quote, sanitized reports about FDA staffers he'd worked with previously at the Secret Service. Vermillion didn't comment, but the FDA confirmed his departure. FDA Associate Commissioner Beth Martino said, quote, "We appreciate Terry's years of public service and wish him well in retirement," end quote. In other words, don't let the door hit you in your caboose on the way out.
All right, enough of that running stuff. Time to use my arms and not pass out on the side of the road. Anyway, time for some quick hits. I wonder if I've got any pie left.
Genzyme expects to fully supply the worldwide market for its Gaucher's disease drug Cerezyme in the fourth quarter. It's a big step in its recovery from ongoing manufacturing issues. U.S. patients began returning to normal doses in September after a shortage of the drug was caused by manufacturing problems, namely a viral contamination that shut down Genzyme's Allston, Mass. Facility in 2009. The company should achieve full worldwide supply of Fabrazyme during the first half of 2011, it said. The FDA has released its latest list of scarce drugs, and several cancer drugs are included. That's causing issues around the country as some cancer patients have to wait or even forego chemotherapy with some drugs that are running short. In all, some 150 drugs are on the FDA's scarcity list, which is a record number. Last week we told you about life sciences companies needing to utilize the internet more. Now the FDA agrees. According to a new guidance from the FDA, device makers should include their Internet Uniform Resource Locator, or URL, when feasible on their electronic product labels. Now, for some time now, device companies have been required to include info like their full name, site, month, and year of manufacture on their electronic product ID tags or labels. Adding a website address to the mix would enable a manufacturer to provide its location and other details that would not typically be included in a product tag or label. AstraZeneca plans to sell off its AstraTech unit, which makes dental implants and medical devices, for about $2 billion. AstraTech is headquartered in Sweden, has 2,200 employees worldwide, and reported $500 million in revenue last year. AZ is facing a wave of patent expirations over the next several years, and analysts said the move shows management's focus on boosting returns and freeing up cash that could be put to use for increased share buybacks or small-scale acquisitions in the core pharmaceuticals operation. While the pharma industry is still cutting jobs, 2 medical device makers just announced hiring plans. Utah-based Merit Medical Systems plans to hire 75 employees at its Virginia site and invest $1 million more in its business over the next 18 months. And in Indiana, medical device manufacturer LH Medical says it will add 65 jobs by 2013 and spend $5 million to expand a manufacturing plant there. So, polish up those resumes. GSK is bailing out of the penicillin biz, in the U.S. that is. The drug maker is selling off its penicillin manufacturing facility in Bristol, Tennessee, along with the U.S. rights to branded penicillin meds Augmentin and Amoxil. Indian generics maker Dr. Reddy's Labs is the buyer, though the terms of the deal weren't disclosed. Now, both Augmentin and Amoxil have generic rivals in the U.S., so they're not big sellers for GSK, who will keep the rights to sell them outside the U.S. in places like emerging markets where GSK could market them as branded generics. For Dr. Reddy's, the deal gets them in the door of penicillin meds in the U.S. market.
Jeremy, look at all these leaves. This is ridiculous. Can't rake all these leaves. It's exhausting. I need to pay some neighborhood kid to do this. Speaking of money, time for Money Matters.
Boston Scientific is buying Los Gatos, California-based Cedra Medical, a development stage company, for up to $450 million. The deal has an upfront payment of $225 million plus additional potential payments of up to $225 million through 2016. The company has been a strategic investor in Cedra since 2006. Medtronic will pay $800 million in cash to acquire Mountain View, California-based Ardian, a privately held company that makes catheters and other products. In addition, Medtronic will pay commercial milestones equal to the annual revenue growth through the end of fiscal year 2015. Medtronic previously invested in Ardian and holds an 11% ownership stake in the company. The deal is expected to close in Medtronic's third fiscal quarter of 2011.
Now this is more like it.
Hey, I thought you were going to rake the leaves.
It's under control.
Facing a nationwide shortage of thiopental sodium, a key anesthetic used in executions, some states are beginning to think outside the box. Case in point, Oklahoma, where a U.S. district judge just approved the use of pentobarbital, which is normally used to euthanize animals. The state has said in court filings that veterinarians regard pentobarbital as an ideal anesthetic agent for humane euthanasia in animals, and that it is substantially similar to thiopental. The judge agreed and also denied requests to delay the executions of 2 Oklahoma inmates whose attorneys had protested the use of pentobarbital. Oklahoma's lethal injection procedure, like that of most other death penalty states, involves injecting thiopental to render an inmate unconscious before other drugs are injected to cause paralysis and stop an inmate's heart. Now, this ruling could prompt other states to use pentobarbital and thus prevent delays in capital punishment triggered by the thiopental shortage. Now, in the early 70s, Oklahoma was the first state to approve the use of thiopental in capital punishment, and it later became the nationwide standard. Hospira, the sole U.S. maker of thiopental, says it won't resume production of the drug until 2011 at the earliest. According to the FDA, the injectable form of pentobarbital is made by Wyeth, which is a unit of Pfizer. The lack of thiopental has played a role in delayed executions in California and other states. Some states, such as Texas, have a sufficient stockpile on hand to cover near-term executions, but they could run into delays next year.
See? Now this is how you get the raking done. Keep it up there, Jeremy. Well, that's it for this week's edition of BeakerBeat. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week.
You missed a spot.
Sit, Beaker. Sit. Good dog. Work faster. There's no lollygagging.
I quit!